So the next current events topic that I wanted to discuss was a story that broke last week in various tabloids, discussing or saying that the Dominic Cummings' father-in-law had said that Boris Johnson apparently plans on resigning in 6 months due to lingering coronavirus-related health problems. I wouldn't really normally plan on speculating about these sort of headlines, especially considering it was, I think it first broke in the Daily Mail. But
Brett, your opinions of certain newspapers are becoming clearer and clearer in this.
Are they? Really? But I think it's still worthy of discussion and of speculation, probably because I think it's not exactly, to me, it didn't seem that surprising. It was.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. I don't think anybody read it and thought, "Oh my goodness, what a
exactly."
incredible,
Yeah,
it was kind of like, "Oh, right, okay."
Shocked.
Yeah, that's it made me
angry.
Yeah.
It made me angry to see, but yeah, it doesn't seem like it's that shocking considering how it feels like. I think somebody mentioned earlier that Boris Johnson seems to be quite absent a lot lately during these different scandals and fiascos, like the recent A-level stuff, and there's been constant U-turning from the government since the beginning of the pandemic. How likely do you guys think how much truth do you think there is to the story?
Yeah, who knows, right? Who knows? And if Boris Johnson is really struggling with prolonged coronavirus symptoms and his health is taking a toll, any response other than wishing him well and him ensuring that he makes the right decision for his health and his family is the wrong response, right? He needs to ensure that he's making decisions based on what's going to ensure that he's healthy and lives a healthy life. And
it's not that difficult from the decision that the Japanese Prime Minister recently made.
Exactly. And I think as a country, if your leader turns around and says that I have these issues and I'm going to have to step back because of that is something that should be applauded. I think in the same way as the response has been to Shinzo Abe stepping back, we would have to say, that it's the right decision to take. If you can't fulfill your role, you need to step down and ensure that somebody is in that position that can. But what happens then is, to me, the interesting part. So, JR, I don't know what you think, but...
Yeah, I agree. I think that at the end of the day, he went through what he went through, and I think his general health and everything, no one knows what it would have been like anyway. So I think that he could have had underlying things that might have been worsened or whatever by COVID, and all of that is speculation. But like you said, if he has to take a step back and he says, I'm going to do it, then I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with it, and they shouldn't. If anyone says my health is affected or whatever, he's got a young kid now, right? He's got a baby and all of this stuff. You just have to say that's okay, that has to happen, and at least he will take the step to do that. But the problem I think that will happen is who's going to replace him, because this is what I'm thinking in my head. You look at the Conservative leadership bids and the various successes and failures of certain people, and then you look at Rishi Sunak being thrown in, and I know that he is, based on different opinion polls, people are really, really taking well to him. On
Rishi.
All sides of the spectrum. Super Rishi, literally. I think it's one of those situations where he's doing all the things that he needs to be doing, but also he looks the part, right? Like, he looks like somebody who knows what he's doing, or even if he doesn't know, he looks like he's reassuring. I'm not a Tory voter, but I remember listening to him speak, you do feel like a bit, okay, you know what, maybe this is okay, it's not that bad, and that is the feeling that you get with him. Not that bad sounds like a really bad standard in this current, but I mean 2020 has been wild, so that'll have to do. But do you see what I mean? He comes across like that type of character, and I think that it would be interesting to see if he would be a favourite. Now, I have seen a few opinion polls that have said that he would be a favourite to replace Boris Johnson, but this is all, still quite early days for him as Chancellor. If he has to suddenly start increasing taxes, I think we read that, like you said earlier, Jack, taxing higher taxes for the middle class, even up. We've even seen, even the upper class. In one of the newspapers, was it the Times? I think, I can't
Yeah.
remember. Discussing that. Now, if he does that, will he still be popular? Will he still be popular? And if he's not popular, exactly. And if he's not popular, then who would be next? Now, I genuinely struggle to think of another cabinet minister who would appeal to people who aren't just conservatives, who would seem like, people. I don't think people are ever going to be that happy. I think society is very, very polarized politically at the moment. But people in a pandemic situation just want, some reassurance and some
Yeah.
movement and some stability. I don't know. Who do you guys think would be able to, if Rishi Sunak was out the picture, who would be that? I just don't know how people would respond. I think it's so up and down.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of popularity in that cabinet at the moment, especially on the front bench. Rishi Sunak is certainly number one, and what a rise it's been from being pretty much unknown to most people to becoming Chancellor, probably being the standout in the cabinet throughout the coronavirus. It's not the bar's not that high, but he has certainly been a lot better than everybody else. The rest has
Also,
been a shambles, but.
I think that's another point to make as well. Like, it's when you compare him to everyone else that's in that cabinet, especially any of the the more well-known ministers, he is definitely the best received, I think, across the board. And also, I remember watching him in the election debates. Was it December? He stepped in, I think it's for Boris Johnson, for a couple of the debates. And I actually remember like watching him then, and I said, you know what? I have a feeling. I swear to God, I said this. I'm not just saying it now because he's really popular, but I remember saying it at that point. I was like, he seems like somebody who, if things didn't go well with the Tory party, I feel like he could actually steer them in a better direction.
Yeah.
Just because you get that sense from some people, and I think that it comes across so well received that if you then compare somebody else to him, I mean, Priti Patel is, even speaking to some of my lifelong Tory like friends at uni and whatever that are, the old-fashioned conservative kind of policies that they're talking about. Back in the day stuff, it's none of what's been going on recently. A lot of them don't like Priti Patel, which I was quite surprised by, because I thought she was really well received a few years ago. Maybe given what's happened recently with the migrant crisis and everything, I think that it's maybe put the toll on her a bit more as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, and Sajid Javid, for example, he's no longer even in the cabinet. So I think he was also someone that was quite well received at that point too.
Yeah.
So you're looking at all these people who are no longer there, and then you're looking at who is there. We have Michael Gove. Jeremy Hunt's no longer there, but I mean, would he step back in to try and have another bid?
The thing I think with a lot of these politicians and especially the cabinet members that ran either previously or have been at the forefront during the pandemic is that there's so much disdain for a lot of what they've done during the pandemic. A lot of their appearances have been terrible. So names that I would have suggested pre-pandemic would have been people like Priti Patel. I think somebody like Sajid Javid has got a better chance now than when he was in cabinet. Somebody like Dominic Raab, who probably would have gone for it. Even somebody like Gavin Williamson. These are all names that have come a bit more to the forefront, people who have tried to take a more prominent role, but because they've been sort of torn apart so much during the pandemic, I think it's far more difficult for somebody, or it would be far more difficult for somebody who has been more prominent and has a bit more history in the party to take over. Whereas Rishi Sunak, he's got a fairly clean slate. He's done a decent job throughout the pandemic. People don't hate him. He's not the sort of person that when he comes on the TV, you can imagine people sort of shouting at the TV and getting annoyed at him. He's quite direct in his line of answering questions, which I think people like. And he comes across as being electable, I think, far more than any of the others.
100%.
I saw some speculation online, so take it with with skepticism, but of people sort of suggesting that the whole reason for for Boris Johnson resigning, that it's a strategic move because for the Conservative Party, because they were saying that doing so would allow them to reinstate a proper Conservative leader that they have a bit more control over, and would hopefully give them a bit of or because of the lead in the polls that they did have.
Yeah, so
maybe not so much anymore. But
that's the key.
But they did have around this time last year. They did also have around the same. They were neck and neck with Labour around this time last year as well. So if they were to put a new leader in place, one that's a bit more respected, say Rishi Sunak, then perhaps the polls would go up again in favour of the Tories.
I think that's also terrible strategy. Sorry, Joe, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I also think that's something they'll probably have to consider now as well, is given Labour's leadership at the moment with Keir Starmer, I think that they'll now be also thinking a little bit more about somebody who's not just good for their party in that sense, but also somebody who can come up against Keir Starmer and look respectable, look in control, look like, in Prime Minister's questions, not look so flustered, not look so, on Conservative Twitter as well, like when you look at what people are saying during Prime Minister's questions, a lot of them were saying, what are you doing, Boris? Kind of what is going on? And I think that Keir Starmer as an individual anyway is someone who comes across really, really well. He's so well spoken and he carries himself very well. I think anyone would have a hard time looking composed against him because he's so brilliant at speaking. So now I think that if they do look for a new leader, I think they'll also be looking for somebody who can come up now against opposition, because I think before, where Labour were, if we're quite honest, Labour weren't, people didn't really see Labour in the past, haven't seen Labour in the past few years as for front runners or whatever. It's always been, I think the Conservatives were just about pit Labour in that sense, as painful as it is for me to say, but I think that's the truth. I think now, they're a lot more aware of the fact that Labour are opposition. I think that Keir Starmer in the last few months has made it a bit more apparent that Labour are here now. We're under new management. We've all heard that him say that, and I think what will be really important for the Tory party is to now think about somebody who can come up against that, because that is their competition now in forthcoming elections. That's who they're up against. They need someone who comes across that way. Rishi Sunak comes across very well spoken. He does, and I think that would he be good opposition? I think he would. Imagine watching them both in a debate. I think it would be. I don't think any of. I think we'd actually be interested in hearing what they have to say. I don't think we'd be there like, screw this person. We'll be watching. We'll be like fixated because they're both. I'm not counting out the Lib Dems. I'm not counting out the Green Party, but I'm just saying.
I'll count out the Lib Dems for you.
Count them out. But with the current situation, that's also new. So when we were looking at someone replacing Theresa May, that wasn't really necessarily on people's minds. Now it will be, and I think that that's also important to take into consideration. But yeah, I think Jack really hates that theory that you
no, I agree.
About.
I do agree with you, and I think that when thinking about the next leader, that is something that they should certainly be thinking about, because let's see what happens in the US, but it seems as though this want or for shoot from the hip, kind of say what you think, whirlwindy, more populist candidate is maybe diminishing. The want for that is maybe diminishing, and because of how serious some of the issues that have had to been faced and how poorly these kind of candidates or these kind of politicians have dealt with them, people are wanting a bit more of a traditional politician. Granted, Rishi Sunak fits that mould fantastically. Let's say Boris Johnson isn't standing down because of his health. Let's say that he's standing down because he's being pushed out because this is a political move. They have a massive majority. They can pass whatever they want, right? So if there are policies or if there's a policy platform that wants to be pushed within the Tory party, they can do that. They do not have to instill the manifesto from the last election. They can put forward whatever policy they want to because their majority is that large. They have complete control, right? So as the polls start to move more in favour of the opposition, to put that majority under threat, like Theresa May did, is an absolutely terrible idea politically. It's a risk putting somebody as inexperienced as Rishi Sunak in that position, especially fighting an election under a Labour Party that has had somewhat of a surge. It's not been, you know, like amazingly, fantastic, but it's better. And, you know, putting Rishi Sunak in that position to keep the majority is a dangerous risk. Let's also not forget that even if the pandemic finished tomorrow, there are massive political issues on the horizon for the Tories to face. The Brexit negotiations have gone absolutely awfully. It looks like we're careering towards a no deal. We have a refugee crisis. We have an economic crisis. So there are massive.
The speculation I saw suggested that Boris Johnson would take the brunt for.
But what elect in an election? That's a fucking awful idea. Oh, I'm standing down because I've done a really shit job. Please vote us back in. What
I don't think he ever would.
What sort of position is that to take?
I'm just saying, as somebody who, like, from my personal experience, we've all seen what Boris Johnson has said about minorities in the past. I remember, like, when he left as a London mayor and he went out of the scene, everyone was like, "Where's Boris?" I was like, "He's going to come back. He's going to run for leadership. He's going to try and become prime minister." And I remember saying at that point, he will not admit to anything that he said, anything that he's done. I cannot see him, no way, taking the brunt for this.
I agree. But also, coming back to a more policy standpoint, to keep their majority, they have to retain the seats that they won in the north. Have they done enough? Let's say we have an election in a year's time, a year and a half's time. Have they done enough to win those seats back? I don't think so. I don't think they've even remotely done enough to show that they warranted, because that's what everybody said, wasn't it? You know, a lot of people after the election that come from traditional Labour families in the Red Wall said, "It pains me to do so, but I'm loaning my vote to the Tory party, and let's see if they can keep it." And have they done that? I don't think they have. And I think that somebody like Keir Starmer is far more electable and far more appealing, both from a policy point of view and a leadership point of view, to those voters than Boris Johnson or even Rishi Sunak would be. There's still a lot of work that Labour have to do, but I just think that throwing away a majority because you don't like the leader that was elected is a shocking idea. And if he was to stand down, we know that this has been Boris Johnson's lifelong ambition ever since he was like 3 years old.
Literally, came out the womb ready with it.
But if he were to resign, he could then say he was former Prime Minister. Isn't that what he was always after?
Yeah, but disgraced. One of the most unpopular prime ministers. And there's been a few to choose from.
Well, exactly though.
I think that's true as well. Like, Labour have we have a lot of work to do with Labour as well, I think. But like you said, in those situations, Boris Johnson I don't think he would ever bear the brunt for everything that's gone on, or even say that he would, because also, you know,
I don't think he'd say that he would, but he might allow people to say that he
I just don't. Well, who knows, actually. You know what, I don't think he would, but then so much has happened. Maybe do you think he's sick of it? Maybe he is. Maybe you're just like, guys, I've got a baby to raise, I've got a family now, you know, because those things do change things. Like, you know, when you start having your own, you know, your family and spending that family time and all of that, his lifestyle now would be very different to what it was when he had the ambitions to become prime minister. And
for sure,
you know,
he did actually have a near-death experience as well, which I think
probably
does
true.
open your eyes, even if you are as.
But again, it's a different kettle of fish if he's. It's a different kettle of fish if he steps down because of health concerns.
Yeah,
I think that's a different. I think that's quite noble and commendable. If it is a political move, and I don't think it is a political move, I don't think it would be a political move. But if it is, that's again, that's you have to view it from a different position. And Rishi Sunak will be the next leader of the Conservative Party. I think it's
you've called it
pretty clear.
I think he's actually quite. I actually think he's quite a boring speaker. Just to put that out there. I've not been impressed by it.
So I think that you know what, honestly, I think we're just so used to, I'm just so used to seeing Boris Johnson, and I'm so used to seeing
Yeah,
like the mess
yeah,
that has been made, that everyone's standards for everything
Yeah,
has just dropped. So like, you know, even if there's one thing that we're unhappy about with Rishi Sunak, I definitely think in comparison, I feel like, for example, in Prime Minister's questions, he would come across a lot more in control of what he's saying. I think he wouldn't get too as flustered.
yeah.
I think that
I
little
don't know
things
if it
like
would
that
sound
might
like
make
he
a difference.
believes what he's saying though. That's
That's
what I
also,
get from him. It
yeah,
doesn't sound particularly passionate or just
yeah.
interesting. He
Yeah,
sounds
but
very
let's
bland
not
when he talks.
in the role that he's in as Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Yeah, it's not exactly.
You have to be. You're not going to be there, you know, like
Super,
giving these massive,
super
rousing
passionate, over
speeches
the
about
moon.
getting
Sure,
cheap
sure.
beer
Maybe
at
he'll change my
Wetherspoons.
mind. Yeah,
But you
yeah.
know, like he's.
Maybe I'll be pro Sunak by the end
Who
of the
knows?
year. Who knows?
Who knows?
Oh my
But I
God,
think
can you
that
imagine?
when you look at who, when you look at, I can't imagine it. When you look at who's there, and who would be running against him, I can't really think of anybody that would pose a massive threat to his leadership ambitions, particularly
Same.
because he's probably the only Tory politician whose stock has gone up over the COVID period.